Hi, as Sally mentioned, I'm Jackie, and a very, very warm welcome to this session where we'll be covering off how to turn initial contact with a bereaved supporter or bereaved person connected to your charity into a long-term supporter. Now, this webinar is going to follow on a little bit to the Brilliant Cruise bereavement webinar that they gave a couple of months ago. So I've kept it consistent around Cruise's insights, and we'll give a little bit of their background just as a bit of a refresher for those that perhaps were on the webinar, but also for those who didn't attend the webinar. I think it'd be a good starting point just as a bit of background, just to go through about what grief and what bereavement can mean to a supporter. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of background. But actually, I've been working for Much Loved now for nearly 6 years, which seems to have gone by in a blink of an eyelid. And in that time, I've come across lots of amazing people. And the thing they have in common is that they all want to share the story of their loved one to make a difference and help support the charity that they've had that connection with. So I know it sometimes feels a little bit daunting to talk to that bereaved person, but in my experience, they actually do really want to share the story of their loved one. So it's just getting over that barrier of making that initial contact. So I really hope you're going to enjoy this webinar, and I hope it will help give you some real insight to help you in your role and break down some of those concerns about approaching a bereaved supporter. One thing Cruise did mention when they were on their webinar was that this subject matter might touch a nerve with some of you if you've gone through a loss or bereavement. And if you do, for whatever reason, you find some of the points or memories a little bit difficult, we don't mind if you want to leave or take some time for yourself. So it is being recorded. So I just wanted you to know that we are aware that it can be upsetting at any point. So let's go on to the first slide then, Sally. Our grief is unique as we are. So what do we mean by that? So in the UK, as we know, we're not that brilliant at talking about death, grief, and our emotions. So many people really can struggle after a death. They just don't know what normal grief is, or how they're expected, or how they should feel and behave. Grief is actually a complex mix of emotions that shifts and changes with time. We know that the connection of the person who died is at the heart of your supporter's grief response, along with how they died. But the course of death doesn't make one bereavement any different or worse than another. Everybody's response to loss is going to be unique to them. So we should be mindful not to compare the feelings that your supporter may have with the grieving that we may have felt. So it's just something to be really mindful of when you first make that initial contact. It really is. Every bereavement is just unique to that supporter. Okay, thank you, Sally. So the grieving factors. So understandably, we wish that there was a straightforward way to adjust to life after someone close to us does die. Grieving is unique to the individual because of the many possible factors that can shape the experience. So, for example, the relationship. Did the supporter see that person every single day? They're part of their daily life, or was it somebody they rarely saw? That can make a difference to how strong the relationship is. With regards to support, a person can be surrounded by people but still feel very unsupported. They still might be feeling isolated and alone, even though they've got a network of people that they could access every day. So actually, this is the opportunity that your charity can support them as well, such as a fundraising event, something that they can focus on, something that you can let them know that you're there for them, something that they can participate in and feel that they're making a difference, to help the charity in memory of their loved one. So don't be frightened to tell them that you've got some event going on where they can achieve their goal, if you like, of helping support the charity that their loved one also supported during their life. Um, Culture and faith. So, person's culture and faith can also shape the grieving experience. It can be comfort or it can be unhelpful. So, it might be difficult to understand why their loved ones died, which in turn can turn into a bit of a root of distress. And also, finally, how that person died, traumatic or maybe it was peaceful and expected, can also sort of shape how they're feeling and getting through their bereavement process. So, I don't know if any of you guys have any experience where you've talked to a bereaved supporter or communicated with them. You may not have had an actual conversation, but if any of you have got any sort of insights or learnings or something happened to you that when you talk to a bereaved supporter you wouldn't mind popping into the Q&A box, it might be good to share in this forum, just see any ideas and tips that came out that helped you with that conversation or didn't, as the case might be. So anybody with any ideas just or experiences, please feel free to pop in the Q&A and we'll check them out later. Next slide, please, Sally. So there isn't any magic date when the grief is over and you can just get on with your life as before. As we know, in truth, life's probably never going to be the same for that supporter. Many people talk about learning to live with the grief or being able to live with their feelings of grief. Most say, though, that the grief never goes away and it can bubble up again and feel as raw as it did just after their loved one died. So, the impact of grieving causes many feelings and sensations and people to act in strange ways. So, there's no set time for grieving. So, it could be your supporter lost their loved one a year down the line. They could still be feeling this very mix of different feelings, behaviours. I know on a personal note, when I lost my sister, for the first few months, I would follow people who looked like her. Now, I clearly knew they weren't my sister, but I just thought I'd better make sure, which, is absolutely not usual behaviour. And although I probably didn't realise at the time, that was the impact of grieving. So yeah, it's just things that people might do out of the ordinary. You might know your supporter, might think, oh, this isn't what they normally like. So you can, just be mindful of the different sort of things. We do know a story of one person who was setting up a tribute fund and they had hallucinations that they kept seeing their pet, nothing to do with the loved one that had died, but they kept hallucinating about pets. So there's different ways people grieving can affect them. So just before we go on to the next slide, is there anything there we can share, Sally, with some of the experiences that people on the webinar have had?
Yeah, people are just sort of sharing how they speak to or respond to supporters, so kind of matching their language, which I think is always a really great idea. Yeah, so there's a couple of comments about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is common sense as well, just to be able to read what it is. But yeah, it is difficult, especially if you get a barrier and you don't know what to say. So, leading into that, if you go to the next slide, please, Sally. So, navigating those tough conversations, what to say or maybe what not to say. So, don't be afraid just to say, I don't know what to say or how you feel, and listen to your supporter, how they describe their grief. I mean, it may be hard, especially if you've had your own bereavement grief, but just be mindful that these supporters are connected to your charity because their loved one either supported you or you've helped them in your time of need. They have a relationship with you personally, and although they can empathize with their bereavement journey, especially if you've experienced loss. Sharing your experience at this time of the relationship with your supporter may not be the conversation they're ready for. I know we all fall into that trap thinking, oh yeah, that happened to me too. We've all been there. It's just really trying just to navigate through that conversation where you really are just listening to them. So when talking to the charity partners, I often get asked, but what do I say to a bereaved person? And it really needs to be something that just comes naturally to you. So it could be something just simple like, I'm sorry to hear your sad news. Just try and, listen and then, just state them. But the important thing is to acknowledge that they are talking about their loved one and that they are bereaved and they are, talking about someone who's died. So, try not to circumnavigate around it. Just acknowledge the fact that that's what they're telling you. On that note, Much Love do offer bereavement courses, normally May and October, and I know a lot of you have been on them, where those courses will do more in depth about navigating through tough conversations. So look out for the notifications about those courses as well, if it's something that you feel you could do with a bit more knowledge of. Um, Avoid those phrases about I know just how you're feeling, because when my mum died, my dad died a few years ago, and then launch into your story, it's really difficult because you feel like you're trying to help the supporter, but actually they might not be in a place where they're wanting to hear about somebody else's bereavement journey. And we've all been there as well. In fact, we've had it said to us loads of times, time is a great healer, and I'm sure it does get easier, but at that point in time, that's probably not what your supporter wants to hear. Um, and sometimes you might just know what to say, and I would just literally say that to your supporter, because no one actually can fix what's happened to them. There's no right or magic words, so you just need to sort of listen to them and see what it is what they're saying, which I think it sounds like, looking at the chat box, that quite a lot of you are in that space anyway. So next slide please, Sally. So what we do know that bereaved people often say similar type of things like, I don't feel anything, I feel numb, I thought I'd be over this by now, but actually 6 months down the line I'm not, just can't eat and sleep. So this is their emotional feelings that your supporter may be experiencing, and it can be things as well like anger and denial, depression, and obviously just acceptance. You probably get a sense of the emotion they're experiencing as the conversation or communication develops. So it's just being mindful of what they're saying to you, is probably you'll be able to gauge what sort of space they're in. So I don't know if any of you had experience with that as well, but they're the sort of normal conversations that bereaved supporters may throw at you. So if we go on to the next slide then, please, Sally. So many of you probably already have a wealth of in-memory products that you can offer to your supporter, and they really are a great support. Um, I don't know if you want to put in the chat box what you do offer already. What do you aspire to offer? I know if a lot of you've got to do cost considerations, and the other thing to consider is that although you may have that initial contact with your bereaved supporter, they will have family and friends that were also connected to the bereaved. So what sort of benefits have you got for family and friends, that sort of next connection, ring out, if you like, with that initial supporter? Because these family and friends are also probably going to be your fundraisers, your donors, your repeat donors at times of anniversaries and birthdays days. So, you know, it's worth looking to see what you can offer that can have a great support. So I don't know if any of you've got some fantastic, brilliant in memory products that you might be willing to share with the other charities on this webinar, just in case it gives food for thought. So if you have, pop it into that Q&A, and we can share that again at the in a little while. The other thing to think about as well is how can you piggyback on organisations that might be connected with you. So, for example, Stroke Association this year had a stroke garden at the Chelsea Flower Show. So this is a great idea to join up and use others' facilities. Now, most organisations often have a link with the charity and everything. So it's just a case of looking at those opportunities. What can you do? I'm sure the organisations will be really wanting to help you. And then, you know, it's another touch point with your supporter to say, hey, look, we're doing this. Do you think that might be beneficial for you? So it's something that you are offering your supporter to help them through this bereavement journey. If we go to the next slide, Sally, there are some examples of in-memory products that we do already. So, for example, the physical garden. So these are lovely ceramic little forget-me-nots that are at some Columbus hospice. In fact, Sally, I think you've got some information on other ceramic um, contacts as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so at the National Funeral Exhibition that we exhibited at last month, I met a lovely chap called Darren from a company, and I'm just going to pop it in the chat for you, from ceramicflowers.com. So make the kind of similar flower to that forget-me-not kind of on a stem, and they've got flowers available from sort of £5 per stem. But I just thought actually it was a really lovely product, and that they sell them as kind of grave flowers. But actually, I thought that there was maybe an opportunity for our charity network to use them as well in terms of, or connected with in a memory event, because they're actually fairly good value and actually something really lovely for your supporters to be able to keep. So I've popped the link to his website in the chat so that you can have a look. And I think, if I remember correctly, the chap's name's Darren, but he said he would be interested in working with charities. So and also maybe you've also got the potential for him to design a unique flower for your organisation. I just think it's a you know potentially a really good in memory campaign, and then your supporters got something physical that they can keep in their house, which would look beautiful.
And I can see we've got lots of fantastic in-memory projects that you already do. So we'll have a little look at those a bit later. I'll just go through these other examples. So the online memory wall. So all our partners, whether you're Advantage or Optimum, have access to dedication pages. And I know most of you will by now have in your memory walls that you have on your memory pages. But if you haven't, I'd really be an advocate to say have these, because they're a great way of allowing your supporter to make a one-off donation when they share their story of their loved one. Tribute funds aren't for everybody, but you know, that one-off donation and giving them that space or that place where they can add a picture, a few brief lines about their loved one. As we said earlier, I've never come across somebody who doesn't want to share the story of their loved one. So again, this is something else you're giving your supporter, and in a way, they're keeping them connected to your charity. Anfield, Liverpool, I'm sure we've got some Liverpool supporters here. Obviously, when you walk into the stadium, you've got their memory bricks, which is a lovely idea. So some of you might have spaces where you can do this. I know a lot of the air ambulance have their own sort of spaces. So just a little idea. RNLI do a brilliant thing where you can have your loved one's name on a little decal that goes on the lifeboat. And what they then do is that once the decal is on the lifeboat, they drive their supporters, the supporter, to a dedication page where they can upload a picture and really share the story of that loved one that the decal is in memory of. So it's a really nice sort of two-stage approach where they can keep in touch. And I know you've not all got lifeboats, but you know, if you've got like a garden wall or somewhere or a little memory tree that I can see some of you had, it's definitely worth doing. And prostate cancer, obviously, with their portable memorial. I've actually seen this, I think it was at King's Cross station, it might be Euston. It's an absolute sort of wow. It almost gave you like, when I looked at it, really touched me. I don't know anybody on that memorial, but just to see the names and everything, it really felt heartwarming, and to have that physical presence. I thought that was such a brilliant idea. Again, I know that they're a larger charity and they've probably don't know how much that cost them, but I thought that was a really good investment to see it actually in a physical space. So there's some sort of in memory project examples and ideas, some obviously expensive, some not, but it, you know, it just gives you food for thought to think, you know, what products can you keep connected to that supporter in a way that you're still helping them on their bereavement journey, but you know, they're still keeping connected to your charity. So I hope those ideas do give a few food for thought. Should we have a look to see what ideas we have got, Sally, just while
Yeah, I have
we're
to say thank you to the audience because you're brilliant. You are sharing so many ideas. And actually, before we started looking at the in memory kind of product ideas, you were really fantastic in supporting each other in terms of how to speak to supporters. So I just to say thank you. But I mean, there's all kinds of ideas. So I would just, rather than me reading them out, I would suggest that you will have a quick look at the chat and see what other charities are doing and what they're suggesting, because there's really some really great stuff in there.
yeah. Well, I always know that you lot are a creative bunch, so that just goes to show that that is true. Um, okay, so I think that's quite a lot of ideas. So if we go on to the next slide. So nurturing that supporter engagement. So now you really do want to keep them connected to your charity and what they're doing. So why is it important to nurture your supporter? So we've got an absolutely key stat on why nurturing supporters is so important. So we know here at Much Love that tributes with additional interactions beyond the first few default contributions, i.e. a funeral donation, maybe light a candle, have a higher donation value. On average, the value increases by 3 times after just 6 interactions. And then donations seem to continue to increase the more interactions there are. And we can tell by our stats that until it hits around 20 interactions, and then it seems to level out. So it's really key that you've made that initial support contact, you've told them all about your different fundraising options, your in memory products, and then sort of keep nurturing, whether it be through a stewardship journey or whether you have communications at relevant and appropriate times like Christmas. You're helping that person. We do know that bereaved people are looking to be heard, understood, and acknowledged, which is really difficult to give that initial conversation, like we're sorry to hear about your loss. But I think if we can get over that barrier, it starts that connection. Also, as well, I know we all do everything these days on email communications, but if you do have the time or the opportunity to actually talk to the person rather than email them, that's another way of building a stronger relationship. Um, just understand how, unrelated issues may be impacting them as well. You might have some sort of event that actually that brought back a different type of memory. So, don't be scared to sort of address this and everything, especially as you go on and build up the relationship. They're probably really, really grateful that you're helping them, supporting them, and giving them the opportunity to do something, make a difference. So keep that in mind. They're connected to your charity because they want to be. Don't forget that as well. So yeah, it really does pay off in the end if you can sometimes have a chat rather than an email conversation. But obviously that's beneficial in building a relationship. But I do know, especially fundraising teams, when they're organising events, that might be a luxury that they just don't have time for. Okay, the next slide, please, Sally. So ideas for nurturing that supporter engagement. So key rings and pin badges. Now I know Sally absolutely loves the key rings. So I'll tell you what, let Sally explain to you why she loves those key rings.
Well, I just think it's a really lovely idea if you have the resources to be able to do it, to send a key ring to everyone who creates a tribute via your service, and that key ring may have a symbol on it that connects the tribute fund scheme. So maybe if you've called your scheme Forget Me Not Scheme tributes, then you could have a small picture of a Forget Me Not or cutout of it on the key ring, and you send that to the supporter when they've created a tribute. They can put that on their key rings. We all use keys every day, even if we're working from home or if we're going into an office, we all use our keys. And I just think every time you pick up that bunch of keys, then that creates that physical connection between that individual and their tribute page. So I just think from that point of view, it's a really lovely opportunity to supply something physical to your supporters when they've got a virtual place to remember.
Okay, and much love to have pin badges, and I know that our supporter care team are forever sending them out because a lot of organisation these days you wear a lanyard, and a lot of the charities they like to put the pin badges on the lanyard. So I often go to a charity partner and I'll see our pin badge on their lanyard. So I know they're really popular as well. That's for your charity. But if somebody has got a much loved tribute fund, you can send them out a pin badge. Um, as well. So it's a nice little way of keeping that connection. So in memory events, I know everybody doesn't want to run a marathon, but if you do hold your annual walk where everybody, family and friends, your pet dogs can do the annual walk, especially if you make it a nice sort of experience for them. Maybe at the end of the walk, you've got some way that you have a chat with them, remembering their loved ones. It might be something that they want to do every year for you. They might not fundraise for you the rest of the year, but if their annual walks in the um, diary for them, that's something that you can, easily involve them with every year, and with again still keeping them connected to your charity, but also those repeat donations and that chance where they remember their loved one along with like-minded people walking along the in memory walk. Um, Keep your communications appropriate. So at Christmas, which is always a difficult time, if you do have tribute funds, we do know that supporters really like it when the charity light a Christmas candle on their behalf. You can let your supporter know that there's candles to light on tribute funds. There's lots of way of keeping connected to them at this time, but giving them a little bit of support as well to let you know that it's Christmas, it's going to be difficult, but here's a couple of little things of comfort that you can do. Don't forget that fundraising can be a huge part of a person's bereavement journey. In a way, you're helping them achieve the goals that they may have set themselves. So there's no need to be reticent in letting them know what it is you can offer them to help them support through that journey. So I hope some of those ideas that we've given you and some of the sort of language around an initial contacts helped a little bit here. Um, If any of you've got any other ideas of how you can nurture that supporter engagement with your events, I can see here we've got an annual coastal crawl. That sounds interesting. And a beautiful church, things like that are absolutely stunning. So yeah, if anything else at the minute you want to pop in that chat box, that'd be great, and we can share. And I think next slide is questions and answers, but just want to check that we haven't missed any great ideas to highlight to a much loved trolley fob. That must have been before my time, Sally.
No, that was from. I'm just looking around to see if I've got one actually. I probably have somewhere. We produced them for the National Funeral Exhibition, and so Olivia must have come to see us there. So yeah, we gave all of those out. Actually, I've got one on my keyring too, and it's really useful. um, but I guess I was thinking with tribute fund holders, maybe something a little bit more special than a trolley fob. You wouldn't want to be leaving that in a trolley if it meant something to you. So, but yeah, that's what that was about.
Yeah, so we've got a question here. Where do you get the key rings from? So do we have a we do key rings,
Um,
Sally?
I don't know where we got our trolley fobs from, but I can find out. I think there's lots of suppliers that do kind of general merchandise that you'd be able to get a key ring from, and you'd also be able to get them customized if you wanted to. I should imagine you've got a merchandise supplier somewhere.
Okay, we've got a question here about a full stewardship process. So, Claire, I do know that lots of our charity partners do have a full stewardship program. So I'm sure if any of them want to contact you. And in fact, some of our webinars in the past have been run by our charity partners. And Bowel Cancer UK did a fantastic journey stewardship that they do with funeral partners. So if you look back on the charity support site at past webinars, you'll see lots of our charity partners and the webinars that they've run previously and their insights and tips for stewardship. So yeah, so we can do that.
Actually, I was going to say if you're talking about a stewardship program for people that have made in memory donations, I guess it depends on whether they've made a donation directly through your website for a particular. I think what I'm trying to say is it depends on their relationship to the deceased, because if it's a donation in memory at a funeral collection, then that individual may not have a particularly close relationship with the person that has just died, but they've made a donation to them. So I don't know. I think you need to weigh it up. Is it worth your resources sending a huge amount of, you know, stewardship kind of journey information to that individual, or are you better off focusing your time on your tribute fund holders and nurturing those relationships? But actually, the dedication pages are brilliant for hosting a memorial wall. So for people that don't want a tribute page, they don't necessarily want to take that on, but they still want to remember somebody in a slightly bigger way than maybe making a one-off donation on a charity through a charity donation portal. The dedication pages offer people the opportunity to leave the name of the person, a message about them, and also upload a photo as well. So that can be a really good alternative to tribute pages for your supporters.
Yeah, that's good. And I can see a lot of them have in MEM stewardship program. With engagement, it's really difficult as well because sometimes a person in their bereavement journeys might want to contact you in the beginning, but not some others don't. They're not ready to do anything for a year. So I remember when I worked for a previous charity, after the end of the year, anybody who hadn't made a further in mem donor, we had a different type of message for them, just to say, you know, with remembering you, thinking of you, just to see if there was that interaction, and if after 3 attempts they didn't, then they didn't bother them again. And that also meant that you could really concentrate on those ones that really were keeping the connection with you. But it was just be mindful that if they hadn't connected with you at first, or didn't want to do anything at first, or it might be a few months down the line, just 12 months down the line, just to make that contact again, to gauge where you were with that donor. It might be that at that point in time, actually, they are ready to contact with you. They would like to do something. So it's almost like two channels. Those that didn't, respond to your initial, perhaps in-men thank you letter, or however you steward them. But just be mindful that they might have had too much going on at that time, or no headspace to think about supporting you, but further down the line they might do. So that worked, because we got some different sort of donors. They were still in the bereavement journey, but further down the line. But it's just worth, perhaps bearing in mind.
Brilliant. So this has kind of brought us to the end of this morning's session. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to respond to each other in the chat. And thank you so much for being so generous in terms of sharing your stewardship journeys. We're always looking for people to join us on these webinars. So if you're particularly keen to share your stewardship journeys, perhaps we could run another session like this with a couple of charities sharing their journeys on this in a more kind of formal way. So if you are up for that, then please do let me know. You can put your name in here. I'll keep a copy of the chat, or you could email me at sally.swan@muchloved.com, and we'll set something up in the autumn, perhaps. So thank you to Jackie for running this session this morning. From the level of interaction on the chat, I'm assuming that it's been really useful and helpful for everybody. Don't forget to let me know if you're interested in sharing your stewardship journey. And yeah, wish you all a really fantastic day. And thank